Prologue. Fury Carson hated weddings. He despised the gaudy show of wealth that often revealed itself in the most outlandish ways. The teen billionaire wasn't a fan of the horse-drawn carriages with Cinderella themes or the musical performances by a bride and groom that usually rivaled an over-budget music video. He hated the wedding fiasco. He could do without the over-the-top event that always made allowances for the unexpected. Fury grimaced at the mere thought. When lots of free alcohol and good music were a part of the wedding reception, emotions usually ran high, and tempers often flared. Fury did not particularly care for the occasional fistfight that broke out before the highly anticipated celebration even began. The youngest sibling of the Carson clan thought briefly of his brother's nuptials. Bryce had married his soulmate a week ago and was now honeymooning in the Virgin Islands. A guilty pang of regret hit Fury as he recalled the disruption he'd caused at that wedding. He hoped his brother had truly forgiven him for his lapse in judgment and the slight altercation that followed. He'd behaved like a hothead, a man ruled solely by his feelings. Where had his common sense gone? The 19-year-old was not the type of man to be easily provoked. He knew when and where to handle his business. Fighting over another man's girl was definitely not his style, and to do so in front of the entire bridal party was reckless. Fury glanced apprehensively down at his pregnant fiancée in her ill-fitting white gown. She was very beautiful and very round. He could see her protruding navel pressing defiantly against the tight material of the inexpensive dress. She was 41 weeks. She was due any day, and she was carrying his cousin's baby. Fury Carson thought again of the fight. The young Tennessean could not have let the personal offense against her go unquestioned. He believed in valor, integrity, and commitment. A bitter smile touched the corners of his mouth as he relived the satisfaction of throwing the first blow. He'd do it again if it meant defending Meghan Johnson's honor. Fury wouldn't tolerate her being disrespected in his presence. He refused to stand idle and watch her be humiliated while his cousin flirted openly and kissed several of the bridesmaids. His conscience wouldn't allow it. Why hadn't he met her first? He deeply regretted not being the cousin who'd made Meghan Johnson's initial acquaintance. The Southern gentleman eyed his unsuspecting fiancée. She was enthralling to look at, he thought shyly. Her dark walnut-brown skin and amber gold eyes contrasted alluringly against the whiteness of the frayed wedding veil. "Reverend Bowman," said Fury Carson, as he enthusiastically stepped forward, grasped the family pastor's hand and squeezed it firmly. "Thanks for clearing your schedule." "Of course, it's no problem." "I truly appreciate it. Meghan and I are in a bit of a rush." The clergyman accepted the greeting of his young parishioner with a smile. "Always glad to see you, son. Sweet Meghan, it's been some time, but forever a pleasure. Send my blessings to your mother. She's a miracle worker on Communion Sundays." He glanced upward and continued in a rich, heavy Southern voice. "I am certain the Lord will not mind my saying so. How are those 6 pretty sisters of yours?" "They are all fine, sir," Meghan said in a quiet voice. She could not muster up the same spirited greeting as her companion. The aging pastor smiled affectionately at the beautiful woman standing beside the innovative young entrepreneur. They made a gorgeous couple. So young, so full of life, he thought nostalgically. The two were just beginning to live. They had so many dreams to conquer, so many wishes to fulfill. Their future was brimming with the sweetest promise of eternal love. The senior pastor issued the early morning arrivals into his private study and closed the door. It would not take him long to perform his duties and send the pair on their way. Mrs. Bowman rushed to the side of her husband and continued the pleasant inquiries. She was equally as kind, but a little surprised by the sudden request to meet today. She examined the bright, expectant eyes of the couple and prepared for the ceremony to begin. Fury tried to remain calm and resisted the urge to seek out the only exit that would permit his escape from the private office of the local pastor. This was what he wanted. This was his only opportunity to marry her, and he was taking it. The gorgeous, sexy cowboy hadn't hesitated to offer Meghan Johnson the dangerous invitation of becoming his wife. He hadn't paused or wavered in his speech when he'd stipulated that if she were to agree to marry him, Meghan would have to break all ties with his cousin, Gerard. Fury had made it very clear that she would be starting a brand new life with him. That meant Gerard Carson, the father of her unborn child, would cease to exist for the next 5 years. The man could have chaperoned visitation rights if he chose to be an active father, but he'd not spend another minute in Meghan's life. Those were Fury's conditions. He wouldn't deviate from them. That was the only marriage proposition that he was willing to make. She'd give him all or nothing. The unconventional teen billionaire stood with his back erect, posture straight, and eyes forward. His face displayed no evidence of a conflicted conscience. He knew she didn't love him, but he'd proposed anyway. He wanted her to have a husband. He thought every child should have a loving father. Fury's hands did not shake as he weighed the depths of his decision, but he was nervous, and it revealed itself in the way he held the velvet box that contained the gold wedding bands. What kind of husband was he going to make? Would he be able to satisfy his new wife sexually? He'd never made love to a woman before. Would she be able to tell? Fury thought briefly about the secret pact he'd made with his 2 older brothers. Would she laugh at his inexperience? Or would she respect him and his decision to wait? A white tuxedo jacket proclaimed his chastity as it hung stylishly from Fury's broad shoulders and tapered down to a lean waist that accentuated very long legs. He was a man of stature. The height worked to his advantage and placed him in an enviable category. He put most men to shame with his physical presence, caramel brown skin, and cool green eyes. Fury was the perfect man for Meghan Johnson. He was kind, generous, and wealthy, but he was about to make a huge mistake. He was going to marry the wrong woman.